Hello and welcome to PT and Nutrition Education's e-learning platform. Today, as you can see, we are commencing with the Level 3 program cards related to your Learner Achievement Portfolio. There are some differences as opposed to the Level 2 program cards which you produced. So therefore, it is important that you listen to the full lecture and understand some of the differences and therefore what you must include in order to achieve full marks within your LAP. Okay, so if we first look at the warm-up, here we've provided examples which are certainly not exhaustive, and we certainly don't expect you or want you even to copy these word for word. Of course, this is going to depend on what your client wants and how you're going to approach the program card yourself. But what we've done here throughout the next few slides is just give you really an overview of what is expected in order to achieve full marks in the Learner Achievement Portfolio. So let's first have a look at the warm-up. You'll see there that I've got a range of cardiovascular equipment. Now, throughout the program cards, you have to show that you've used a range of cardiovascular equipment. So you can see there that we've got a choice of the treadmill, the rower, the cross trainer, or the stationary bike in which to pop your client on before a session begins. In this instance, I've chosen the treadmill. And you can see that the timing there, in terms of a warm-up, in terms of gradually increasing heart rate, we're looking at about a 5 to 7 minute time period, which we recommend and you include on your session plans. When it comes to the workload or target training zone, there are two methods in which we can use in order to distinguish the workload which your client is working at. There is also an additional lecture on this which you can access in this particular unit, and that will be related to the rating of perceived exertion and how we use this effectively, and also maximum heart rate values, and again how we can use and apply them in the training setting. So you can see there that I've provided a RPE, so this is rating of perceived exertion, on a scale of 1 to 10. And you can see that I've done this on a minute by minute basis, and we expect you and need you to do the same when it comes to planning your own programs. You can see that from minute 0 to 2, I've provided an RPE scale of 1 out of 10. Okay, then we move gradually through minute 2 to 4 to RPA 2, so we can ensure that intensity is progressively rising as time elapses. And then from minutes 4 to 6, we're on RPE 3, which is just at the cusp of the aerobic training zone, where intensity is increasing. But the important thing here is that we've shown progression of the intensity throughout the warm-up period. And we must provide teaching points, and a minimum 4 teaching points based on how to actually conduct that exercise in the appropriate manner. So you can see for the treadmill, we've got 4 coaching points here: to maintain position in the middle of the treadmill belt, to ensure upright posture, the abdominals are engaged and we're looking forward, heel to toe action on the leg stride, and of course we're swinging our arms in order to generate momentum as we progress into that RPE 3 scale. For the training system, when it comes to the warm-up, we can identify 3 different types of cardiovascular training which could be included. However, it is recommended that for the training system relating to the warm-up, continuous training is used. So of course this is at a steady state over a longer period of time. This has been proven time and again that this is one of the most effective ways in which a warm-up can be conducted. However, with that being said, when we move on to the cardiovascular element of the program card, it is then that you have to use a different training system in order to obtain full marks across your 2 session plans that you need to complete for level 3. Of course, any effective warm-up is going to include some dynamic stretches. This is to ensure that we are mobilized and that we have active muscles before we actually start conducting any resistance-based training exercises. And with the LAP, what we need to do is we need to provide 10 dynamic warm-up stretches. Now, of course, we're not going to use each and every one of these for every session, but of course this gives us a range or some options in which to use throughout the program with your client. There's a few things that we need to make sure that we include, and that's of course the name of the exercise. Okay, so you can see here for this example we've got lunge with rotation. We also need to include the amount of sets that we're going to do and then the repetitions included within each set. You can see there here that I've stipulated 2 sets and 8 reps on each leg. Now it's very important as well that for each one of your dynamic stretches you provide a diagram, okay? You can see that I've only provided a diagram on 2 exercises, but for your LAP you are going to have to provide all of the diagrams for each and every dynamic stretch that you do. An additional point to the warm-up stretches is that we must include both upper body and lower body stretches throughout the 10 examples that you're going to give. You must include reps and sets, and all of the exercises must be dynamic. So dynamic means a stretch whilst on the move. So the first part of your program card includes the main cardiovascular component. So as you can see here, just like we did at level 2, we have to choose the relative CV equipment. And once again, we have a choice of the treadmill, the rower, the cross trainer, or the stationary bike within the gym. You can use any one of those, but over the 2 session plans, we do expect to see different CV equipment being used, not only for the cardiovascular component of the session, but also for the warm-ups and the cool downs. As well, you'll see the addition of the training system, and as we mentioned in the previous slide, we must try over the 2 session plans to use a range of the different training systems. Now, of course, for the warm-up, you can include continuous training, and indeed for the cardiovascular component training system, you can as well use continuous training. However, over the course of the 2 session plans, we expect to see maybe a continuous training session plan and also a interval or fartlek training system being implemented. When it comes to the time, we're looking really at a minimum of 10 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes, where a cardiovascular stimulus can actually be given to your client, and therefore cardiovascular improvements can be made. And as you can see, we've chosen here in this particular example interval training. So this of course is intermittent in terms of the intensity at which we're going to run, and you can see that I've outlined the workload and the target training zones for every single minute across that 12-minute exercise training session. So you can see here that there is a difference in the RPE scale. Remember, RPE is rating of perceived exertion, and in this particular example I've used the RPE scale of 1 to 10. So from minute 0 up to minute 1, we're running at an RPE of 8. Now, of course, this is going to be different for different people. So in terms of an absolute speed on the treadmill, of course, that's going to differ depending on your client's fitness levels. So we're going to work that for the first minute on a RPE of 8 out of 10, and then you can see for the next minute we go from a running or even sprinting motion into a walking motion for minute 1 and 2. So you can see the RPE drastically reduces there from 8 to 3, and therefore the target training zone has changed. And of course you can see that over the 12-minute period we repeat that where the RPE goes up and then goes down, and therefore fits into the characteristics of interval training. So we've identified the RPE through each one of the minutes, and that's what we expect if you are to do interval training on your cardiovascular session plan. Once again, there is a example of what RPE means, and again we've said that we're going to sharply increase the RPE or heart rate. Again, you can choose to use heart rate readings if you so wish every other minute to keep in guidelines with interval training. And once more, we've provided 4 teaching points. Remember, you have to provide a minimum of 4 teaching points by which coaching cues can be given to your client during your practical assessment as well. So it's good practice to try and get these teaching points down into your program cards so that you can then teach these during your coaching in the final practical assessment at level 3. When we move on to the main resistance training section, here you can see that we must include 4 training systems across the 2 session plans. Now, for this video example within this lecture, I'm only going to show you 1 program card. Of course, within your LAP, you must include 2 program cards, but it is important to keep in mind that program card 1 represents weeks 1 to 4, and program card 2 represents weeks 5 to 8. What we must see across the 2 program cards are 4 different types of training systems. So on the first program card, we might see 2, and on the second one, we might see a further 2. Okay, so it is important that we see a range of those across the 2. You can repeat the training systems, provided that we do get 4 different ones across the 2 session plans. So hopefully that's clear. Now, the rest of the session plan is very similar to, again, what we did at level 2. So we must identify the exercise that we're working. So on this particular example, we've chosen the squat. The training system that we're going to employ are negative reps. The equipment is going to be, of course, squat rack, barbell, free weights, and safety clips. Now, the theory with negative reps as a training system incorporated into a training program is that it increases time under tension when lifting. So you'll notice here that the tempo is split into 4 numbers. So you'll see that we have 4, 0, 1, 0. And each number represent each aspect of the lift. So we'll have the eccentric portion of the lift, the bottom of the movement, the concentric portion, and then the top of the movement. And you'll notice that in order to spend more time under tension, we must spend more time lowering or lengthening the muscle, which of course is consistent with eccentric contraction. So the reason behind spending more time under tension and also slowing down the eccentric phase of a lift is that this can potentially create more muscle damage, and research has shown that this is one of the triad aspects in which hypertrophic responses can be facilitated. Then we move on to the teaching points, and we've got here once again 4 teaching points relating to the squat and how we could use those as coaching cues, not only in our program cards but also during our final practical assessment. When moving on to the second training system, you can see that we've chosen a pre-exhaust technique. When it comes to a pre-exhaust technique, what we're trying to do is that we will have a target muscle. So in this instance, our target muscle is the pectoralis major, which is the chest. This is our main area of the body that we're trying to work with the pre-exhaust technique. And what we're doing here is that we're exhausting the synergist muscle, which is the triceps brachii, before working the pectoralis major, before the compound movement of the bench press. So the theory behind this is that by exhausting this synergist muscle, the agonist of the subsequent movement would therefore further increase motor unit recruitment and therefore muscle fiber recruitment of the target muscle. So we've chosen here the triceps press down. So here we're going to try to exhaust the triceps, which of course is a major synergist when working on a bench press movement. We're going to do this with a rope pulley. Of course, that's the equipment that we're going to use. And we're going to do 3 sets of 10 with an RPE rating of 7. So again, the move is quite difficult. We're going to exhaust the triceps brachii. We're going to use the teaching points that we've described, and then we're going to move straight into, after we've completed that particular set, into the bench press. So with the bench press now, what we're trying to do is work on the pectoralis major, and because we've exhausted the triceps brachii, then the theory is that we can therefore drive more recruitment and more engagement of the pectoralis major, which could subsequently mean that we get increased growth or increased strength in that particular area. So for the bench press, just to go through some of the formalities, we once again identified that it is part of the pre-exhaust training system. We've identified the equipment. We've said exactly the reps and sets that we're going to include. Of course, you can see here that we have a hypertrophic rep range, and therefore the growth of the pectoralis major is the major aim of this particular session. And therefore the rep max percentage would have to be adjusted accordingly, of course, so that we can meet that rep demand from the session plan. And once more, we've provided 4 teaching points, which again provide the cues and all of the technique aspects of the move, so that proper coaching can be installed and proper form can be used by your client. Continuing with the main resistance training section for program card 1, you can see that we've now included the 2 remaining training systems. So the first one that we've gone for is a superset. Now there are many ways in which to do a superset, but the basic definition of a superset is that we include a exercise and then go straight into another exercise once we've completed that particular set. We can do this for the same muscle group, so we might go from one exercise that's related to the quadriceps and go straight into another, which again prioritizes the quadriceps, so therefore we're working that same muscle group. Or indeed, we could do antagonistic supersets where we work, for example, the biceps in one exercise and then the triceps in the other. For this particular superset training system, we've used forward lunges and seated leg extensions. So the primary muscle here, the agonist during these movements, is going to be the quadriceps. We look at the equipment. We've got a squat rack, barbell, free weight plates, and safety clips. Of course, all of these very important in order to do a barbell lunge. We've got 3 sets of 10 on each leg. So whether you see EA or EL, of course, this means each arm or each leg, depending on the exercise that you're completing. And again, we've gone for that hypertrophic RPE scale and hypertrophic rep range if, of course, strength and hypertrophy is your goal of your program. When it comes to the teaching points, once again, we've used 4, so just to give you a couple of the teaching points for the forward lunge, we position the bar on the fleshy part of the upper back to make sure it's nice and comfortable for the client. We have the feet hip width apart, abdominals are braced, as with most of the exercises, we should be embracing the core, and of course keeping that neutral spine for safety during the movement. We stride one leg forward and the lower body so that the front knee is at a right angle, and then we push that lead leg through the thigh to return to standing position. So we're pushing through the floor, and of course we will feel that particular resistance through the quadricep up into a standing position, and that's why of course the quadricep there is the agonist during that particular movement. Soon as we finish one set, we then go into the seated leg extension, hence why it's a superset. So again, we are trying to exhaust the quadriceps. We're doing this through, once again, a hypertrophic rep range and an RPE scale of 8. So once again, the RPE scale will be determined by the client's strength and also their recovery status, their sleep status, and so on. All of that plays a part, which is why really we shouldn't be putting absolute weights within our program cards, because what feels 8 on one day might feel like a 6 on another, and we have to be mindful and adaptive to that. Once again, we provided the 4 teaching points for the seated leg extension, which once again ensures the correct form and also execution of those particular exercises. And then lastly, we move on to the final training system, which is the drop set. So a drop set is using the same exercise, but then once we've finished a single set, we then drop the weight and then complete another set. We can do that 2, 3, 4, 5 times, depending on what we're trying to achieve. But that is the basic premise of a drop set. For this particular exercise, we've chosen the lat pull down. So of course we're going to need a lat pull down machine, and because we're emphasizing the latissimus dorsi, we're going to use a wide grip bar. In keeping with the drop set theory, of course we're going to do 2 sets, but one set is going to be equal to 24 reps. So we are going to complete one set of 8, but then we're going to drop the weight by 5% and do a second set of 8, and then we're going to drop the weight again and then do a final set of 8 to conclude one full set. So this would be one set, we then rest and go back and do again another 24 reps as we decrease the weight every time we start the next part of the drop set. And then lastly, once again, we've provided 4 training points in order to keep the correct form and safe execution of the exercises during your program cards and also during your final assessment. So hopefully what you've got there is a good understanding of how to plan within your program cards the 4 different training systems. Of course, there are more. This is not an exhaustive list for which you can choose. So please refer to your LEP for the training systems that you can employ and can put over your 2 program cards. And the final part of your program card section within the Learner Achievement Portfolio relates to additional information about your clients. So here we have to give exercises, physical activities outside of the gym environment. So your client is not just relying on your input within the gym, they're also staying active and keeping a healthy lifestyle outside of the gym, because of course it's likely you're only going to be seeing them for 1 hour within the day. Of course, this is only 4% of their day, and therefore therefore it's important that we educate them to make sure that they are exercising and keeping a healthy lifestyle outside of the gym, especially in keeping with their goals which we've already set out. So, of course, we've just got some examples here. Once again, they are not exhaustive. And if you have any more creative ideas of things that you can do and employ with your client for outside of the gym activity, of course, you can. We've got here examples of swimming, five-a-side, tennis, and walking. Once again, you can educate your client on why keeping a physical lifestyle is very important for overall health. And then we've got the additional precautions or comments, anything that's going to be related to your client. As we said many times, each client is going to be different, and therefore there are precautions which are going to differ from person to person. Again, some examples that you may wish to take note of are injuries. So, of course, are there any injuries that your client has had in the past, which may, of course, stop them taking part in certain training systems or even certain exercises? Are there anything going on with family stresses, or is there anything going on at work which, of course, might actually inhibit them or become a barrier into them achieving your overall goals through your 8-week predictive program overview?